Hello friends, in this series of case study, we are going to discuss today about the argument building. How do we build arguments? Or you can say also you can call it justification. Then how do we justify the positions we take in the case study? In this series, I'm trying to emphasize on the certain different aspects. So let's have a very quick recap. See, when I say case studies, I always emphasize on one thing, that case study is all about effective decision-making process rather than simply throwing the choices, evaluating it, and writing it. Uh, there is a difference between decision-making and effective decision-making process. Number one. Number two, as I always say, that whenever you are going to solve case study, always keep four things in mind. Number one, uh, identifying the problem, because many time what I see, students are not able to go deep into the problem, and they are going for the very superficially. Number one. Number two, it's all about the role obligation. So you have to identify how you are positioned in the case, with which authority, whether you are accused, victim, or holding a position, what are their stakeholders, what are their demands, what are their claims, what are their interests, etc. And then third, obviously, the objective or goal you want to achieve. And the fourth, most important of all, as I always say, in the different session also, we discussed about the constraints. So these four things that you will have to very clearly identify before you start writing. And so you will find the way UPSC designing the questions or the case study, there are different kind of demands. For example, it may be conflict of responsibility. It may be related to simply, you can say, the ethical dilemma. It may be related to based on only, you can say, the legality or the perspective of law, where the scope of morality or the moral values is less. So obviously different kind of cases are designed and based on a certain specific demand. So in this session, what I'm going to discuss about how to build the arguments in the case study. Let's have a look. Let's see this case. Fine. We'll take example of 2-3 cases, and through which we'll try to understand how to develop arguments, how to explain, how to justify, so that it gives a sense of completion in your argument, in your answer. Right? So read this case along with me. Fine, just read it. So what this case says, there was a conflict between the students of the upper castes and the Dalit community in Central University. The dean and the vice chancellor called a reconciliatory meeting, but it did not yield any result. The other day, violence erupted in some parts of the university and some hostels. Examinations are very close. Some students have to submit their PhD thesis or MPhil dissertation. Some politicians from a certain section put pressure on the vice chancellor to take action against the agitating students. Now, on the basis of the given premise, there are two demands. Number one, discuss various options available to the vice chancellor. Justify why these options are worth considering. See, why I say that you need to be a little bit careful about, you can say, the argument building, because see, this justify why this worth considering. It's not simply about the options and where these options will lead to. Certainly, whenever you take any choice or whenever you have options, certainly it will lead to somewhere. But the question is here that it says justify why these options are worth considering. Worth considering. So the question is here that whenever you are going to explain and justify various options, it always moves around certain things. Number one, any option when you are picking, you will have to be very careful about what goal it will help you to achieve. What goal it will help you to achieve. Number two, is there any constraints into it? And number three, the whole process, in the sense how you are going to execute. Briefly. When you will discuss about the process, then only you can highlight the constraints. Fine. So whenever you are building arguments or you are explaining any option, let's say you have considered or you thought of 3 options or 4 options to solve a problem, then the question is you have to deal with each and every options. You have to deal with or you have to explain each and every options. And there it's not simply about what this option is all about. It's basically about 3 things. 3 things in this process. And while doing so, the justification of anything has to be captured. Until unless you capture the justification or you substantiate your point, your treatment of each and every option is not complete. It's not complete. Let's go back to the question or the case or the problem statement. Fine. This was the problem statement. And here it says discuss various options. So obviously, it appears that problem is here. That there is a conflict. Fine. And obviously, in you can say in this case, any vice chancellor will go for restoring the peace in the campus. Obviously, restoring the peace in the campus. But the constraint here is that the reconciliating meeting has been failed. So it is an issue of trust also. It is issue of trust also because it has already failed. Now in the given situation, how you are going to build the argument? So number one, you know what is the problem. It's very, you can say the explicit, and there is anything hidden into this case. But as far as this objective is concerned here, and the constraint is here, then the obviously question is what process you will follow and how you are going to explain it. This is what the purpose of this session is. Fine. Let's go back to understand it in a little bit better way. So when you have to build argument and you know that number one, so suppose if you say that I will, you can say form a committee. I will form a committee. Fine. When you say I will form a committee, now the question is here. In the whole explanation, the question is what purpose it will serve, why you are thinking so, and also you have to possibly visualize the possible consequences. This is how it will help you to understand that it is going to you can say achieve the certain purpose. Otherwise, there is no purpose of considering any option. Because see, in the question itself, what it says, just justify why these options are worth considering. So obviously, when you are writing that, you can say form a committee, then obviously what you will write, number one, that to bring peace. Number one, it will help. Number two, how you are going to do it, in the sense, write down the process. Process, you don't have to mention these things. Rather, in the explanation, the whole process should be inbuilt, in the sense, it is implicit that you are talking about the process. You are talking about the consequences. You are talking about the constraints. You are not separately mentioning these things. Rather, in your explanation, it's inbuilt. So the question is here, what is the process? So process is basically, number one, that to you can say call representative of both the group. Why both the group? Why representative of both the group in this committee? Because if you are writing simply that I will form a committee, the whole intent is not served. The process you have not captured. You are not understanding how, or you are not able to, you can say, foresee the consequences. So actually, when you are going to write, or when you are explaining in 2-3 sentences about the process, how you are going to do so, then it's help you to, you can say, make your answer self-explanatory. This is what the argument building is all about. That it helps it helps your answer to be self-explanatory, number one, and number two, it helps or it gives you the opportunity to justify whatever you are writing, whatever position you are taking, whatever choices you are making in the case. Fine. So this is what the argument building is all about. For example, so how you are going to build the whole paragraph. Number one, in this case, number one, you will form committee. Number two, you will invite, you can say, representative of both the students group. Fine. It will help to restore the trust of students or both the group in this committee, and it will help to achieve reconciliation. You may also write here that in the committee, I will invite the most trusted or more neutral face of the faculties from or among the faculties, because this is how it will serve the purpose. Coming back to the point where I started, in this series, what we are going to do, we are going to discuss the different aspects of the case study, that how to write a case study. Today, we are going to discuss about the argument building. In the argument building, what you need to understand, number one, that you, in the explanation, the process should come, right? You have to explain the foreseeable consequences, constraints here, fine. And if you want to justify it through any fact, figures of the case, or you want to justify through any philosophical thinkers, that's okay. But that is going to be just, you can say, a support sort of thing, nothing else. It has to be based on the solid substance, which you have to pick from the case itself. So this is how you have to treat one by one options. To understand it more, let's go to you can say the another case. This is another case, or you may call it problem statement. Right? You read this problem statement along with me. Just read it carefully. Fine. Then again we will discuss. It simply goes like this. You are head of disaster management team that has been assigned with work of rescuing and rehabilitating thousands of people affected by an unprecedented flood. Team members include revenue officials, doctors, engineers, and security personnel. However, some of the local Leaders of political party were not happy because their personal interest is not being served. A powerful minister of the government visits the area to make a first-hand assessment of the situation, and in the process meets the local politician who were not happy. The minister announces for the suspension of the two of your revenue officials. Your entire workforce get demoralized due to this announcement and are unwilling to perform under the given situation. What are the options before you to deal with this crisis? Evaluate the merit and demerit of each option and suggest the best course of action. Give reason. Now, allow me to come in again. Fine. So, as we are discussing about the argument building in the case study, again, there are 4 things that you have to understand in this case. The problem, number 1. So if I ask you, what is the problem in this case? Because then only ultimately you will understand what is the objective or what is the goal that you want to achieve. What are the constraints in this case? And who are the stakeholder and what are their claims, interest? Why I say that whenever you think for a stakeholder, always think for their claims, interests, etc. Then only you can think for the alternatives, choices, etc. Then only you will get the clue very quickly. Probably then only you will solve problem, you can say the problem statement or case study in 12 to 13 minutes. Otherwise, thinking about the alternatives and building arguments usually take times. It takes, you can say, sometimes more than 17-18 minutes, which is very, very, you can say, crucial time. And if it takes more time, then it's bound to you can say that you are bound to compromise the quality of the answer. Let's come back to the point. So in this case, obviously, the biggest problem is not suspension. Its suspension is, but the consequences of it. So if you look at the argument building in this case, what is the problem? Problem is basically that your team is demotivated. Your team is demotivated. What is the constraint in this case? Number 1, a case is of very urgency. High urgency means you don't have much time. So whatever you have to do while doing the duty itself. And number 2, as the problem itself says, it's constrained also that your team is demotivated. I don't want to go into the stakeholders, etc. So let's say, or let's come back. What are the options before you to deal with the crisis? And then it asks for merit and demerit. Merit and demerit. Fine. Let's come back to the point again. Fine. How we are going to, you can say, build arguments, or you can say how I'm going to make each and every options complete in itself. So let's go back to the point. So in this case, as it is given that this case is a typical case where you have to show the case of leadership where team is demotivated. So obviously you will write that continue the operation. Continue the operation. Fine. Now how to build argument and how to make it complete in itself. So there are 2 things what I say that always keep in mind. The objective you want to achieve. Fine. Number 1. Number 2, always understand the constraints, and number 3, that the process. In the sense, process. So when you are saying that continue the operation in this given case, that number 1, that you will talk to the team, you will remind them about their duty and the urgency of the situation. Fine. You will talk to the team members to motivate them, to establish a better communication. Fine. Also, it will help to listen their points and continue the work as its duty. It's a situation post disaster. Fine. Here. And then while doing so, it's very important to write in this paragraph that it will help to do my duty, but at the same time, my team will remain demotivated as I am not directly doing anything for the suspended team members. So now suppose if I am writing these 4-5 points while dealing with one option and each and every option, then only my treatment of each and every option is considered complete in itself. Complete in itself. Fine. To understand it better, let's take another case. Why I am taking, you can say the one case, another case, and with just one example, because ultimately we are going to discuss in the tests about the you can say the cases detail. We'll correct the copy. We'll have 1-to-1. So here my motto is basically to help you to understand that how to you can say is bring the sense of completion while dealing with each and every option while solving the case study. This is what the whole series is all about. So let's understand again through this case. Let's read this case carefully. A little bit longer. So it says Ratandeep, an orphan, is 30-year-old man who lives in a small town of Punjab. Ratandeep does not have much for sustenance. He does some part-time work in a real estate company as he is incapable of holding a full-time job due to a drug habit. He has also served jail for quite some time for processing drugs which he kept for his own consumption. He never sell it, nor is he involved in any other crime, but community members of his locality do not like him at all. Few senior members of his colony have approached you as you are the police inspector of that area. Community members have put pressure on you to arrest him, considering him as a threat to the society. Community member also approached the local political leader to do something about it, since that community is a potential vote bank of the ruling party. So you are quite aware that sooner or later you will get instruction from the political quarter also to do the same. Answer the following questions based on the above situation. And there are certain questions which goes like this. So it says, discuss the dilemma tangled in the case. Is it ethical to take a strict action? What would be your course of action? Fine. Now, when it says discuss the dilemma in the tangle, again, it's not simply writing that it's legal versus moral or legal versus social role. No, not at all. It's nothing called versus. When you are going to explain it, when you are going to bring the justification, it has to be complete in itself. It has to be, you can say, self-explanatory. This is how you should approach any problem statement or solving the problem statements. So coming back to the point and reminding you that this session is all about one and only one thing, and that how to make the arguments while dealing or while evaluating or while explaining each and every options to answer the problem statement, right? Which brings the sense of completion, right? This is what, and this is the point from where I started this session. So again, come back to the point. Now it says, discuss the dilemma in that angle. Is the ethical to take a strict action? Let's take this option itself. Right. So what it says, number one, why it talks about the strict? Because this is a case, typical case of drug abuse. In this case, whether it is for the personal consumption or professional, the question is basically that it's a case of drug abuse and it's illegal. So it's completely illegal. So suppose if it is illegal, the question is, while dealing with this question, you will only talk about the law, legality, or you think that it's more a kind of social problem where law has its own limitation and you should think for the other alternatives. Now the point when I say that there are some limitation or certain limitations of the law to deal with such cases, then you have to build the argument. Why I say that there is a limitation of the law in these or while dealing with these cases. Why? So when you are answering this why, you are building argument. You are making your options a complete answer in itself. And then you will move to the second aspect. So through law, it's very difficult. You cannot legislate morality through the law. But law is important because law ensures minimum morality. But when these kind of social problems are there, then law has its own limitations. And that's why the role of, you can say, the police officer also in this case to play a role of reformer in the case of the Ratandeep, where he will help the Ratandeep to bring out of the situation. But at the same time, the demand of the community members are also genuine. Now, while making the argument, each of the stakeholders claim interest, etc. and constraint, you have to be carefully captured in your answer. Then only it is going to be complete in itself. For example, here when it talks about that what is the strict action, yes, you will write that as per the law, you can say that it is illegal and then strict action has to be there. But law, you can say, or the implementing law or strict action probably will not help to solve these kind of social problems where there are many, you can say, drug addicts facing the problem of alienation, isolation, etc. where law also has to help them to bring out of the situation or the condition here. Now, when there are 2, 3 why, how involved in this case, when you are going to answer each and everything, you are building argument and you are making the answer or option complete in itself. So this is what the intent is to highlight in this session. Fine. As we have discussed, and in the next session also, we are going to discuss about the certain aspects. For example, only constraint or practical, you can say, the conflict of responsibility, dilemma, etc. There are several aspects that we are dealing with. Similarly, one aspect is the hidden aspects of the cases. There are certain things implicit. So this is how we are trying to learn from, you can say, or learn the different aspects, different demands of the case studies. And as I always say, that case study is not about lecturing. in different session, I will keep highlighting certain aspects, certain dimensions, certain demands. But ultimately, when you are going to write it, we'll have one-to-one session. Then only it will serve the real purpose of the entire case study. Because case study method is all about the active learning. It's not about the passive learning. Passive learning here is just will serve one purpose, that I will give you a frame, brief instruction, and then you engage yourself in the practice, and then post-test, post-practice, we'll discuss about the various cases and the problem statement. Fine. So you do practice, then again we will discuss certain things. Thank you very much. Thank you.